The Your Settings function shows up within the table layout screen, and selecting on this will bring up a screen that pertains to you as a person who is logged into the system. The first button we have here is System Interface. Now, selecting on this will present all of the different modes of operation that an employee can use on the point of sale system. Restaurant seating. That means that this is a person who deals with tables and the table layout. So by logging in, you'll be presented with the table layout, and then from there you select on a table to open a check. Quick order for bar and fast food type places. So this is where a blank check, for example, may show up on the screen, and you just work with blank checks rather than with tables. So for example, beer cash, or burger cash, burger cash. Host hostess. This will present a screen that allows you to manage the allocation of customers to the different tables. So you can manage, for example, a lineup at the front door, for example. You can deal with paging of customers as the table becomes available. You can manage as far as what's going on within the floor and seating people at the various tables. Driver. This is for a delivery driver. So for example, I deliver pizzas, for example. So I would select on this. This would be my interface, and I go into the screen then. And what will happen is when I log in, I'm presented with a driver screen that only allows me to select on delivery orders. And then from there, it will process in terms of the driver going out, the driver coming back in, and settling the checks and so on. Working in conjunction with that is delivery mode. This is for a delivery order taker. So for example, you call up to order a pizza, for example. The person who's on that phone then will deal with checks, and the screen is associated for that to manage, for example, the allocation of members to checks so that you have names and addresses for each one of these. And also within this as well, you can monitor the activity of the various drivers, how long they've been on the road, how long a check has been open, and so on. And finally, we have clock in and out only. So this is for employees who work within the establishment and will be using the employee time clock function within the point of sale system, but do not necessarily need to do anything else in the point of sale system. So for example, I work in the kitchen. Okay, I sweep floors, I make food or whatever the case, but I don't actually work with the point of sale system itself. So the only interaction I would do on this is to clock in and out at the beginning and end of my shift. The next one over is cash drawer. Now cash drawer will allow you to select in terms of which cash drawer will pop open when you close a check, for example. And so on this, you'll see that PixelPoint allows up to 3 cash drawers that can be assigned to any given station. And to take that further, I can go on to lock drawer. On this, it will prompt me to select which station that the cash drawer will be allocated to. So for example, as an employee, I may be set so that the cash drawer number 3 on station number 2 will pop open when I close my check. Coming down below, we have transfer all checks. So as a table service person, for example, it's the end of my shift and tables 1, 3, and 5 are still open. So by selecting on transfer all checks then, it will allow me to select on who the person is going to receive all of my current open checks. And so now I can finish my shift, I can go home, and for example, Susan would take over all of my open tables and pick up where I left off with each one of those. We also have schedule. If you're using employee scheduling with the PixelPoint system, then this screen will become available to you so that as the employee within the front end, you can actually view what your work schedule is for, let's say, the given month. And so within this as well, I can print off my schedule for the next 2 weeks, and it will print off on the local printer. And with this, I can also communicate with the employee scheduler by saying I would like to request time off on a specific day, or it can be the whole day or a portion of the day. To go back to the previous screen, I can select on either employee settings or come up to the top left where it says time. You'll see time and schedule time, or I can also do it by that. Over on the right hand side, I have the various functions that I would use as far as my shift related information. So first of all, I have cash out. So it's the end of my shift. I want to do my employee cash out. By selecting on this then, the system will go through, calculate out what all my sales were and all my various calculations, my voids and my tips and so on like that, and print off my cash out report, which I would then present to my supervisor. With that all completed, I can then go to clock out employee. Now by selecting on clock out, what this will do now is halt the time clock allocation. So as I'm working on the system, the time clock continues to function. And then at the end of my shift, and when I'm finished and so on, I can clock out, and that will stop the time clock for that shift. Declare cash tips. If cash tip declaration is required for wherever you're working, then you can select on this, and from this it will come up with a keypad, and I can say, for example, I have $20 in cash tips. And then this $20 will be included within my cash out report to reflect that I did actually receive $20 in cash tips. Break start. By selecting on this now, the system will ask, is this going to be a meal break or a non-meal break? And within this, based on what I choose, then it will halt the time clock, or it may continue on depending on how it's programmed within the system. But this all pertains to logging you out of the system so that you can go on your break, and then when you come back in, then you're off your break and you're resuming your duties. Down below I have all the various adjustments that can be applied as well. First of all, float. Float is your beginning cash. So for example, as a cashier, I may start with a $200 float. So I would put in the $200. And so now the system will record that when I started at the beginning of my shift, I had $200 in my float, or my beginning cash. Pay in and pay out. These are functions that will manage the adjustment of cash levels to your float or your till that are not associated with the transaction. So for example, a pay in. Somebody owes the establishment money, so here's the money. I would do a pay in, and this would account for why there is extra cash in my till. Or inversely, I can select on pay out. So by selecting on pay out, then I can enter in whatever the dollar value would be for that I am paying out. And within this, I can choose as far as what the reason for this might be. I can put in a reason for it. And within the system, then it will also adjust that value to record as far as why my cash is short, for example, by $10. I also have pickup. Pickup is a function where, for example, you've been working with your till, everyone keeps paying you $20 bills, and you've got a big stack of them, and now you're having problems trying to close your cash drawer because you've got so many 20s in there. So then a manager can come and do a pickup on your system, and by doing pickup, then I can say, for example, in here, do a pickup $200. That means that the manager is removing $200 worth of 20s or whatever value from my till, and is going to transfer that to the safe in the back office. But now I need to have it accounted for within my till. And so by doing a pickup, it will now print off a slip saying $200 was removed from this. The manager can sign it, and that will serve as an IOU. So when you are counting up your cash at the end of your shift, then that pickup slip will account for $200 worth of cash that was done. Down at the bottom, I also have Add Tips. Add Tips is a screen that shows up when you're using integrated credit authorization. And within this all pertains to charge tips or credit card tips. And so in this, I have a list of all of my credit card transactions. And on here, it will show as far as what the total is, what the tip value is, and what the final total is. And on this, then I can select in, for example, Add Tip. I will say that in this particular one, I got a $2 tip. So you'll see now that it shows $21.39 plus the $2, $23.39 is what the total was for that. Selecting on the next one, I come up with $4.95. Now in this particular case, let's say that the customer just rounded it up to $6. So rather than have to go about going through and trying to calculate that out, I can just select on, for example, total with tip, and I will put in $6. And the system will then calculate it out for me, and then I can apply that as well. The last one I have here is your trans, being your transactions. And so within here, I can take a look at all of the various transactions under various filters, for example. Here's all of my general transactions, all transactions that have had members or deliveries associated with them, rated items being rentals, and so on. There's all different types of filters that you can apply for this. And within any one of these, it'll show information as far as the transaction, and I can sort in ascending or descending order on any one of these columns just by selecting on the title bar. The totals window here will show accumulated totals based on whatever is showing in this main window here. And then down at the bottom, I can toggle back and forth between show open transactions and close transactions. And then all of these various buttons here allow you to perform different things, such as printing the receipt, or accessing and printing the receipt by the transaction number, viewing the check. Okay, so I can select on any check and I can view the contents of that check, or I can retrieve it and view it by the transaction number. Also, all types being the sale types. These are all the sale types that are available. I can filter out by that. Or by member. If a member comes and says, I'm Scott Dunlop and I ordered something today, so can you please retrieve it? Then I can retrieve a check by the member name. And then finally, there's unclose, where you can select on a closed transaction, and with a proper security settings, you can then unclose the check, retrieve it back up on the system, and you can work with it again. Select on Leave to come back to your settings screen.